Welcome to Forgotten Realms, where ancient whispers echo through time, and lost memories drift between dream and myth. Here, you will not simply fall asleep. You will wander sacred ruins buried by silence, and unravel stories that history chose to forget. Close your eyes, take a breath, and let the past dream through you. This is Forgotten Realms. Sleep well. Deep beneath the sand-swept ruins of a kingdom long erased, there lies a scepter, not of gold, but of bone, pale, veined, and still warm with ancient purpose. This is not a relic forged for rule, but for remembrance. They say the kings who wielded it never truly died, for their voices still echo within the catacombs of the Withered Vale, whispering warnings, oaths, and regrets. This tale unfolds in quiet steps through cryptic tombs, lost cities beneath moonlight, and dreams stitched together by spirit and soil. It follows a lone wanderer drawn to the scepter's pull, unsure if they were chosen or summoned. As stars turn and owls cry, the truth of the Bone Scepter will rise, not in fury, but in silence. And it is in silence that sleep comes gently. Chapter 1. The Bleached Gate of Silent Kings. The sun hung low and merciless over the Kethmoran wastes, painting the endless dunes in shades of copper and dried blood. Lyra had been walking for 3 days through this desolation, following directions, scrawled on parchment so old it threatened to crumble at her touch. The map, if it could be called, that showed only crude sketches, a twisted tree, a standing stone, and finally, a circle marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. She found the tree first, a gnarled acacia that had somehow survived in this place where water was a distant memory. Its bark was white as bone, bleached by seasons of relentless sun, and its branches reached toward the sky like the arms of a drowning man. Beneath its sparse shade, she discovered the standing stoner weathered monolith that bore inscriptions, in a script she didn't recognize, though something about the angular marks made her teeth ache. The final landmark took longer to find, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her with grasping fingers. She crested a particularly high dune and saw it spread before her, a vast circular depression in the sand, as if some giant hand had scooped out a bowl from the desert floor at first glance. It appeared empty save for scattered rocks and the occasional glint of something metallic catching the dying light. But as she descended into the depression, the rocks began to take on familiar shapes. A curve here that might have been a shoulder, an angular projection there that could have been the corner of a crown. The metal glints resolved into tarnished bronze and green-stained copper, fragments of ornamentation that had once adorned figures of obvious importance. This was no natural formation. This was a graveyard. The statues for that was what they had been lay broken and scattered across the basin floor like the bones of titans. Some were mere fragments, a marble hand still clutching a scepter, a granite foot wearing a sandal carved with impossible detail. Others retained more of their original form, though time and the scouring wind had erased their faces, leaving only smooth, featureless ovals where once there might have been the visages of kings. Lyra moved among them with growing awe and unease. These had not been mere monuments, but works of art that transcended craftsmanship, each one a masterpiece that spoke of a civilization that had understood beauty in ways her own world had forgotten. The marble had been carved to capture not just form, but movement. She could see the drape of robes that seemed to flutter in an eternal breeze, the flecks of muscles beneath stone skin, the weight of authority in shoulders that had borne the burden of rule. but their faces were gone, every one of them, not broken off or weathered away, but deliberately removed, carved smooth with such precision that it seemed the work of a single hand guided by singular purpose. Whatever these kings had been, whatever they had done to earn such monuments, someone had decided that their features should be lost to time, their identities erased from the memory of stone. As the sun sank lower, the shadows between the fallen statues deepened, and Lyra began to notice details that daylight had obscured. Symbols were carved into the bases of the monuments, not the angular script from the standing stone, but flowing marks that seemed to shift and writhe when she wasn't looking directly at them. They were beautiful and terrible, these symbols, speaking of rites and ceremonies that belonged to powers older than the kingdoms these kings had ruled. She was examining one particularly intricate carving when her foot struck something that rang like a bell. Looking down, she saw a bronze disc half buried in the sand, its surface green with age, but still bearing traces of the elaborate engravings that covered its face. As she knelt to examine it more closely, she realized it was not a disc at all, but the top of something larger, something that extended down into the sand beneath. The excavation took the better part of an hour, her hands growing raw from digging in the coarse sand while the desert wind whipped around her with increasing fury. But gradually, the object revealed itself, a stone tablet, rectangular and massive, its surface covered in script that made the angular marks on the standing stone seem simple by comparison. These were not mere words, but a language of ceremony, a codification of rites that had guided the passage of the dead through realms beyond mortal understanding. The bronze that had caught her attention was a capstone, ornately decorated with scenes of procession and ritual. Figures in flowing robes led others toward what might have been gates or doorways, while overhead, celestial bodies aligned in patterns that spoke of times and seasons of cosmic significance. At the center of it all, a figure that might have been a king or priest raised hands toward a symbol that hurt to look at, the same symbol that had been sketched in the corner of her map. As full darkness fell over the desert, Lyra made her camp among the broken kings. She had intended to continue her journey at first light, but something about this place held her. Perhaps it was the way the wind sang through the shattered marble, creating harmonies that seemed almost like voices. Perhaps it was the way the stars overhead aligned themselves in patterns that echoed the astronomical scenes carved into the tablet. Or perhaps it was simply the weight of ages that pressed down upon this place, the accumulated silence of centuries that had settled here like dust. She built her fire from driftwood she had carried from the last oasis, 3 days' journey behind her. The flames cast dancing shadows on the faceless statues, giving them a semblance of life that was both beautiful and unsettling. In the flickering light, she could almost imagine expressions on those smooth features, noble sorrow, perhaps, or the quiet dignity of those who had accepted their fate with grace. The tablet lay beside her fire, its ancient script seeming to pulse with its own inner light. She had studied enough dead languages to recognize the structure of ritual text, the formal cadences that marked sacred ceremony. These were funerary rites, she realized, but not of any tradition she knew. They spoke of journeys through realms, of shadow and starlight, of gates that opened only at certain celestial alignments, of passwords that must be spoken in voices that had been stilled by death. As she studied the inscriptions, translating what she could and puzzling over what she couldn't, the desert night grew deeper around her. The wind died to a whisper, and even the distant cry of night-hunting predators faded until there was only silence. Silence so complete it seemed to have weight. pressing against her ears like deep water. It was in this silence that the humming began. At first, she thought it was the wind returning, perhaps finding some new channel through the broken stones. But as she listened more carefully, she realized it was coming from beneath her, from the sand itself. A low vibration that seemed to rise from the very bones of the earth. It was wordless, but not meaningless. There was pattern to it, rhythm, a cadence that spoke of purpose and intelligence. The sound grew stronger as the night deepened, and with it came a strange drowsiness that seemed to emanate from the tablet beside her. Her eyes grew heavy, despite her efforts to stay alert, and gradually, inexorably, she felt herself sinking into sleep, even as some part of her mind screamed warnings about the dangers of sleeping unguarded in such a place. But the sleep that claimed her was not natural rest. Even as her body relaxed beside the dying fire, her mind found itself walking in a place that existed somewhere between dream and vision, between memory and prophecy. She stood in a great hall carved from black stone, its walls rising into darkness that no torch could penetrate. The air was thick with incense and the weight of ceremony, and from somewhere in the distance came the sound of drums beaten in rhythm. With a cosmic heartbeat she had never heard but somehow recognized, they came from the shadows at the hall's far end, a procession of figures in flowing robes, their faces hidden beneath elaborate masks that gleamed like stars in the dim light. But as they drew closer, she saw that the masks were not masks at all, but faces of polished metal, beautiful, unterrible, and utterly inhuman. These were the kings whose statues lay broken in the desert above, but here they walked in their full majesty, untouched by time or the erosion of wind and sand aught. Each bore symbols of office that spoke of authority beyond the merely that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, scepters that pulsed with their own inner fire, robes that moved with patterns that hurt to follow with mortal eyes. They walked in perfect silence, their metal faces reflecting the light of torches that cast no shadows, their movements synchronized with the deep rhythm that seemed to pulse from the very foundations of the hall. As they passed her, each turned to look directly at her with eyes that were windows into depths she had no words for. She felt herself being measured, evaluated, found neither worthy nor unworthy, but simply present a witness to something that occurred beyond the realm of judgment or morality. In spaces where such concepts had no meaning, the procession moved toward a gate that she hadn't noticed before, massive archway, carved with the same symbols that covered the tablet beside her sleeping form. The gate stood open, revealing not another chamber, but a vista of impossible beauty and terror. A landscape of crystalline formations that sang in harmonies that made reality itself seem fragile. Beneath skies where stars moved in patterns that spoke of mathematics beyond mortal comprehension. Chapter 2. The tomb beneath the sandglass. Trether tablet's weight had grown heavier with each mile, though Lyra knew this was impossible. Stone could not gain mass simply by being carried, yet the ancient slab seemed to press against her back, with increasing insistence, as if it were eager to reach some predetermined destination. She had been walking northeast for 4 days since leaving the graveyard of Silent Kings, following what the ritual inscriptions had revealed to be a map of sorts, not of geography, but of celestial alignments that marked sacred sites across the desert. The sun was approaching its zenith when she crested a rise and saw it, a tree that should not have existed in this wasteland, yet stood defiant against the endless dunes like a monument to persistence itself. From a distance, it appeared to be an enormous hourglass thrust up from the sand, its trunk narrowing to an impossibly slender waist before swelling again into a crown of branches that reached toward the sky like supplicating arms as she drew closer. The true nature of the tree became apparent. It had been petrified for centuries, perhaps millennia. Its wood transformed into stone by processes that belonged more to dream than to natural law. The bark had become a surface of polished obsidian, black as midnight and smooth as glass, while the branches had crystallized into formations that caught and refracted the desert light into patterns that made her eyes water to follow. But it was the shape that held her transfixed. The tree's trunk curved inward at its center with mathematical precision, creating the perfect silhouette of an hourglass. Even more remarkable, the narrowed waist seemed to contain something, a substance that flowed like sand but gleamed like powdered starlight, falling in an eternal stream from the upper portion of the trunk to the lower, only to somehow return and begin the cycle anew. The tablet in her pack grew warmer as she approached, and she could feel a resonance building between the ancient stone and this impossible tree. The ritual inscriptions had spoken of temporal markers, places where time itself had been bent and shaped by forces that understood its malleable nature. This was one such place, she realized, not merely a landmark, but a chronometer, a device for measuring and manipulating the flow of moments themselves. The sand around the tree's base showed signs of disturbance, though not from wind or weather. Geometric patterns had been traced in the dunes, forming circles and spirals that seemed to pulse with their own inner rhythm. At the very center of these patterns, directly beneath the tree's narrowed waist, a section of sand had been cleared, a way to reveal stone, not the rough sandstone of the desert, but smooth, worked blocks that spoke of deliberate construction. Lyra set down her pack and knelt beside the exposed stonework. What she had taken for natural clearing was actually excavation, though not recent. The sand had been moved with care, arranged in precise patterns that maintained the geometric designs while revealing what lay beneath. Someone had been here before her, had understood the significance of this place, and had begun the work of uncovering its secrets. The stones formed the top of a structure that extended deep into the earth, not a building, but a tomb. The capstone bore inscriptions in the same flowing script as the tablet, but here the symbols seemed to move with the rhythm of the falling starlight sand above. As she watched, the markings shifted and changed, revealing new meanings, new layers of instruction that built upon the knowledge she had gained from the graveyard kings. With growing excitement and trepidation, she began to clear away more sand, following the lines of the structure as they descended into darkness. The work was slow and methodical, for she found that haste seemed impossible here. Her movements grew languid, as if the air itself had thickened, as if time were flowing like honey around the tree's base. It was only when she stopped to rest that she realized the full extent of the temporal distortion. The sun, which should have moved perceptibly across the sky during her hours of work, hung in almost exactly the same position. Her water, which should have grown warm in the desert heat, remained cool as morning. Even her own heartbeats seemed to have slowed, each pulse lasting longer than it should, each breath drawing out into a meditation on the nature of existence itself. The tree's sand flow continued its eternal cycle, but she began to notice that it moved in rhythm with her own altered pulse. As her heart beat, the starlight sand would fall, and in the pause between beats, it would somehow return to the upper portion of the trunk, ready to begin its descent anew. She was not merely observing a chronometer, she was synchronized with it, made part of its mechanism by her very presence, by what felt like late afternoon, but showed no sign of being so. she had uncovered enough of the tomb to reveal its entrance. A stairway carved from the same black stone as the tree's bark descended, into depths that seemed to drink light rather than merely absorb it. The steps were worn smooth by the passage of countless feet, though when those feet had last touched these stones, she could not begin to guess that the tablet in her pack had grown almost hot now. And when she drew it out, she could see that its inscriptions were glowing with soft phosphorescence. The ritual text was clearer than ever, and she realized that it was not merely describing ceremonies, but providing specific instructions, directions for the proper approach to places of power, the correct words to speak when crossing thresholds. Between realms, as she began her descent into the tomb, the temporal distortion grew stronger. Each step seemed to take minutes to complete, yet when she looked back, the entrance appeared no farther away than it should. The paradox was disorienting but not frightening. There was something almost peaceful about this slowed existence, as if the tomb were offering her time to properly appreciate each moment, each sensation, each breath drawn in this sacred space. The walls of the stairway were covered in carvings that told a story in pictures and symbols. She saw figures that might have been the faceless kings from her dream, but here they retained their features noble grave, touched with the wisdom that comes from understanding mortality. They were engaged in some great work, moving massive stones, carving symbols into living rock, performing rituals beneath skies where stars moved in patterns that spoke of purposes beyond mortal comprehension. As the story progressed downward, the figures began to change. Their faces grew more angular, their forms more ethereal, as if they were transitioning from flesh to something more refined, more essential. The final carvings showed them entering structures that looked remarkably like the tomb she was now descending, but they emerged transformed, still recognizably themselves, yet clearly no longer bound by the limitations that constrained ordinary mortals. The stairway ended in a chamber that defied the modest size suggested by the surface structure. The space stretched away into shadows that seemed to have depth and substance, while the ceiling soared to heights that belonged in cathedrals rather than buried tombs. The walls were lined with alcoves, each containing objects of obvious significance grounds that pulsed with inner light, scepters carved from materials that had no names, robes that moved without wind to stir them. But at the chamber's center lay something that commanded attention above all else, a sarcophagus carved from stone that seemed to contain its own night sky. Stars gleamed within the black surface, moving in slow processions that hypnotized the eye and spoke to parts of the mind that had no words for what they perceived. The lid was partially ajar, revealing not the expected remains of some ancient ruler, but a soft, golden radiance that pulsed in rhythm with the tree's sand flow above. Beside the sarcophagus, on a pedestal of the same star-shot stone, lay the object she had somehow known she would find, a shard of bone unlike anything she had ever seen. It was black as the tree's bark, but veined with silver that moved like liquid mercury through the ossified material. The bone hummed with barely audible sound, a frequency that seemed to resonate in her teeth and bones, making her entire skeleton into a tuning fork that vibrated in harmony with forces she could not name. As she approached the shard, the temporal distortion reached its peak. Her movements became so slow that she felt like she was swimming through crystallized time, each gesture requiring tremendous effort, yet somehow feeling completely natural. The tablet in her hand began to pulse in sync with the bone shards humming, and she realized that they were components of a larger system, parts of a mechanism that spanned not just geography, but time itself. The inscriptions on the tablet were now blazing with light, and she could read them as easily as if they were written in her native tongue. They spoke of the bone of hours, a fragment of something that had existed before time began its current flow. When the cosmos operated according to different laws and possibilities that had since been forgotten or forbidden. The bone had been placed here as an anchor, a fixed point around which temporal currents could be safely navigated. But it was more than an anchor, it was a key. The ritual text explained how the bone could be used to open pathways through time itself, to create doorways between moments, to step sideways through the flowing stream of causality and emerge in different nows. The knowledge was intoxicating and terrifying, speaking of powers that mortals were never meant to wield, yet had been deliberately preserved for some future need. As her fingers closed around the bone shard, the world shifted. The chamber around her flickered, showing glimpses of other times she saw the tomb being built by the transforming kings, saw it being sealed with ceremonies that called down blessings from stars that had since died, saw it waiting through centuries of emptiness for the moment when it would be needed again. The bone was warm in her hand, its humming now audible as a soft melody that seemed to contain harmonies from across the spectrum of time. She could hear echoes of conversations that had not yet taken place, the whispers of events that existed in potential but had not yet crystallized into actuality. The silver veins in the bone pulsed with her heartbeat, but also with rhythms that belonged to cosmic cycles, to the turning of planets and the death of suns. When she finally managed to tear her attention away from the bone shard, she noticed that the chamber had changed. The alcoves now contained different objects, some that she was certain had not been there before, others that seemed familiar, though she could not remember having seen them. Time was fluid here, she realized, flowing in eddies and currents that brought past and future into contact with the present in ways that challenged every assumption about the nature of reality. The sarcophagus continued to pulse with its golden light, and she found herself drawn to examine it more closely. The lid was heavier than it appeared, requiring significant effort to shift, but as she worked to reveal more of the interior, she saw that it contained not remains but something far more remarkable. The golden radiance emanated from what appeared to be crystallized time itself, formations that looked like honey frozen at the moment of dripping, capturing motion and potential in solid form. Among these temporal crystals lay objects that belonged to no earthly civilization, tools carved from substances that existed in colors her eyes had no names for, books written in scripts that hurt to look at directly, instruments whose purpose could only be guessed at but whose importance was undeniable. These were the true treasures of the tomb, she realized, not gold or jewels but artifacts of knowledge, repositories of understanding that had been preserved against some future need. As she studied these wonders, the bone shard in her hand began to pulse more rapidly, and she felt its influence spreading through her body. Time was becoming more fluid around her, more responsive to her will. She could sense the flow of moments like a river, could feel the currents and eddies that carried events from past to future. With effort, she might even be able to step into that river, to move upstream or down as necessity demanded. But such power came with responsibility, and the ritual text made clear that the bone shard was not to be used lightly. It was a tool for those who served purposes greater than themselves, for those who had been chosen to shepherd time itself through periods of crisis and change. The faceless kings had understood this, had built this place as both sanctuary and test, preserving the knowledge and power for the moment when they would be needed most. The ascent from the tomb took longer than the descent, though in the distorted time stream around the tree, such measurements had little meaning. With each step upward, she felt the weight of centuries settling around her shoulders. The responsibility of carrying knowledge that could reshape the very foundations of reality. The bone shard remained warm in her hand, its humming now a constant presence that seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat and breathing. When she finally emerged into what should have been late afternoon sunlight, she found that the sun had barely moved from its position when she had begun her descent. Hours of exploration and discovery had passed in what seemed like moments from the outside world's perspective, yet she felt the weight of extended time in her bones, the fatigue that came from prolonged exposure to forces that human physiology was not designed to handle. The sandglass tree continued its eternal cycle, the starlight sand falling and returning in perfect rhythm. But now she could see the mechanism for what it truly was, not merely a chronometer, but a regulator, a device for controlling and channeling the flow of temporal energy that saturated this place. The tomb beneath was its anchor, the bone shard, its key, and she had become its keeper. As she packed the shard carefully beside the tablet, she felt the familiar tug of destiny pulling her onward. The ritual inscriptions spoke of other sites, other guardians, other components of a vast system that spanned continents and centuries. The bone shard was only one piece of a larger puzzle, and already she could feel its resonance with powers and places yet to be discovered. The desert stretched endlessly before her, but she no longer saw it as empty wasteland. It was a repository of wonders, a treasury of secrets preserved by those who had understood that knowledge, like time itself, was too precious to be allowed to die. Each dune might hide ruins, each rock formation might mark the location of powers that had been waiting for the proper moment to be awakened behind her. The sandglass tree stood sentinel over its hidden tomb, marking time in ways that transcended the simple progression of moments. The temporal distortion remained strong around its base, creating a bubble of altered causality that would protect the site until it was needed again. But its guardianship had passed to her now, along with the responsibility of understanding what she had found and using it wisely. The sun began its inevitable descent toward the horizon. But here, beneath the crystallized branches, time bent gently, as though it, too, bowed to what slept within. Chapter 3. The voice of the hollow crown Elias, or perhaps Erinder, stepped from the fog of the Vale of the Crownless into a stone hall, its walls cold and grey, untouched by the forest's green hunger. The air was heavy, sharp with the scent of ancient dust and metal, the hum of the forest now a low thrum, like a heart beating in the stone. The hall stretched long and narrow, its ceiling vaulted with cracked arches, moonlight spilling through jagged holes to illuminate rows of empty thrones. Each throne held a crown, some tarnished, some gleaming, their metals dull or bright, but all untouched, as if waiting for kings who never returned. Elias's boots echoed on the worn floor, his knife at his belt a feeble weight against the halls. Vastness, his breath caught as he passed the first throne, its crown iron rusted, its spikes bent. The next bore a circlet of gold, its jewels clouded, and another a bronze band etched with runes that shimmered faintly. The name Erinder pulsed in his mind, no longer a stranger, but not yet his own, a shadow he couldn't shake. The hall felt alive, its silence not empty but watchful. The crowns, its eyes dot at the hall's center, stood a pedestal, and on it a silvered helm, its surface polished to a mirror's sheen, unmarred by time. It was no crown, yet it drew him, its presence heavier than the throne's. Elias reached out, his fingers hovering, and the helm whispered a soft, sibilant sound, not words but fragments, like wind carrying broken promises. He touched it, and the whisper sharpened, a voice not his own, cold and clear, speaking of betrayal. "We swore to share the throne," it said, and Elias saw a flash a king, his face like his own, turning from another, a crown in his hand. Blood on the floor. He pulled back, his heart racing, but the voice followed, disembodied, weaving through the hall. He took it, and the kingdom fell. The helm's whisper grew, joined by others, a chorus of fragment souls, broken. Brothers divided, a crown stolen under moonlight. Elias staggered, the vision sharp, to kings. Their faces his, standing in this hall, one offering a crown, the other drawing a blade. The thrones watched, their crowns glinting, as if remembering the same betrayal. He moved deeper, the helm's voice echoing, not from the pedestal but from the air. The stone, the crowns themselves. Each throne told a piece of the story of vow. Made, a trust shattered, a kingdom split by greed. The silvered helm pulsed, its whispers louder. He wore it, and it burned. Elias saw the king again, or himself, or Erinda. The crown searing his brow, the hall filling with screams as fire consumed the walls. The visions came faster, thrones toppled, crowns melted, a kingdom reduced to ash. Elias clutched his head, the knife falling to the floor, useless. The helm's voice was relentless, its fragments stitching together a tale of royal betrayal. Two brothers, crowned as one, sworn to rule together, their bond broken by a single choice. One took the crown, the other the helm, and the hall became their tomb. The thrones stood as witnesses, their crowns markers of failure, the helm the keeper of their sin. He tried to flee, but the hall seemed to stretch, the thrones multiplying, their crowns gleaming with accusation. The voice followed, "You are him, Erinda," and he saw himself placing the helm on his head, the betrayal his own, the kingdom's fall his fault. He stumbled, falling to his knees before a throne, its crown silver, identical to the helm. The voice softened. He swore to return it, but he never did. Elias stood, his hands shaking, and approached the helm again. He touched it, and the vision slowed, showing the aftermath. Two brothers. One dead, one cursed, the helm left to whisper their story. The hall was silent now, the crowns dim, the thrones empty, but for their relics. He saw the final moment. Erinda, or him, alone in the hall, the helm in his hands, the crown abandoned. The kingdom lost a shadow. He backed away, the helm's whisper fading, but the betrayal lingered, heavy as the name Erinda. The hall felt smaller, the thrones closer, their crowns watching. He picked up his knife, its blade dull, and walked toward the hall's end, where a door of stone stood ajar, moonlight spilling through. The voice didn't speak words, it echoed memories. Chapter 4. The Library of Names. No one speaks Eleazar. Erinda. The name now a shadow he couldn't escape stepped from the stone hall's echoing betrayal into a crumbling stairwell, its steps spiraling into the earth. The air thickened, heavy with dust and the faint sweetness of decay. The forest's hum now a muffled pulse, like a heart buried in stone. The stairwell opened into an underground library, its vast chambers bound in vines that pierced cracked walls, their roots twisting through shelves of rotting wood. Tomes lay scattered, their pages brittle, their words faded into smears of ink. The library of names no one speaks. The name came unbidden, as if the walls had whispered it, their silence heavy with secrets, Elias's boots stirred clouds of dust. His knife at his belt, a cold, useless weight. Moonlight seeped through fissures in the ceiling, casting pale beams across shelves that stretched into shadow, their contents crumbling under time's relentless hand. Vines curled around columns, their leaves brushing his arms, soft but insistent, guiding him deeper. The name Erinder throbbed in his mind, no longer foreign but not yet his, a tether to a past that felt both alien and intimate. At the library's heart stood a pedestal, and on it a sealed book, its black leather cover untouched by dust, bound, with iron clasps that gleamed faintly in the dim light. No title marked it, but Elias knew its purpose. It recorded only the names of the dead. He approached, his breath shallow, the hum rising, sinking with his pulse. The book seemed to watch him, its clasps cold under his fingers, unyielding. He pressed harder, and the vines stirred, their roots tightening around the pedestal, guarding the book's secrets like sentinels. He spoke Elias, testing his own name, and the book trembled, its clasps glowing faintly, ink shimmering. On its cover, a name appeared, not his, but another, Althor, in glowing script, then faded. The air tightened, the hum spiking, and Elias felt a pull, not to the book, but to the names within it. He spoke again, Erinder, and the clasps snapped open, the book's pages turning on their own, revealing names in glowing ink. Vorin, Threnode, Lyserich, one a spark in his mind, each one a life ended, their deaths tied to the crown. The helm, the betrayal from the hall above. The vines pulsed, the shelves creaked, and a vision came, a king. His face like Ilias's, writing a name in the book, his hand trembling as blood dripped from a wound. Another followed, a queen, her crown shattered, inscribing her own name before collapsing. The book recorded them all, not their deeds, but their ends, their names glowing briefly before sinking into the page's black void. Elias spoke another name, Vorin, and the ink flared, the vision sharpening. Vorin, a king, betrayed by his brother. His name written as his breath stopped, the helm's whisper echoing from the hall. He stepped back, his voice shaking, but the book demanded more. He spoke Lysara, and the pages turned, her name glowing. The vision showing her death poison, her lips blue, her hand clutching the book as she fell. Each name he spoke summoned a death, the library alive with their echoes, the vines tightening, the shelves groaning under the weight of memory. The hum was a chorus now, not the forests but the books, each name a note in its mournful song. Erinder, he whispered, and the book surged, pages flipping wildly, showing his face or Erinder's, writing his own name. The crown burning his brow, the kingdom crumbling to ash. Elias staggered, the visions relentless, kings, queens, warriors, all tied to the crown, their names sealed in the book, their deaths a chain that bound him. He saw the twin kings from the hall, their betrayal, vivid, one writing the other's name as blood pooled on the stone floor. The book was their judge, their keeper, its pages a ledger of loss. He tried to close it, but the clasps wouldn't shut, the glowing ink brighter, the names shifting, some his, some not, all heavy with grief. He fled, the library's chambers, twisting, the shelves closing in, vines snagging his cloak. The book's voice followed, not words but names, a litany of the dead, each one a hook in his heart. He stumbled into a side chamber, its walls covered in faded murals, coronations, wars, betrayals, all centered on the crown, the helm, the book. The names glowed there too, etched in stone, fading as he looked, only to reappear in the book's pages. He spoke Threnode, and the murals shifted, showing a warrior king, his throat cut, his name glowing in the book as his body fell. The library seemed to breathe, its vines curling tighter, the air thick with the weight of names. Elias ran, the chambers looping, the shelves endless, the book's presence inescapable. He found himself back at the pedestal, the book open, its pages still, but the names glowed brighter, demanding more. He spoke Althor again, and the vision returned to King, his face his own, writing his name as the helm whispered betrayal, the crown abandoned in the hall above. The book's ink pulsed, and Elias felt it. The names weren't just records. They were alive, tied to him, to Erinder, to the kingdom's fall. He tried to silence himself, but his voice betrayed him, speaking names, unbidden. Sorethech one, summoning a death, each vision sharper, heavier. The library tightened, the vines creeping closer, the shelves leaning in, the hum a roar that shook the stone. He saw Erinder, or himself, standing in this library, the book open, writing his own name as the crown's curse consumed him. The vision was a mirror, his hands the king's, his guilt the kingdom's. He collapsed, his knees hitting the stone, the book's glow blinding. The names kept coming, spilling from his lips, each one a life, a death, a betrayal. The vines wrapped around the pedestal, the book's pages turning faster, showing not just deaths but moments before oaths, sworn, crowns forged, kingdoms built and broken. He saw the twin kings, their hands clasped, their vows pure, then shattered, the book recording their fall. He spoke Erinder one last time, and the pages stopped, the ink fading, the visions slowing. The library grew still, the vines loosening, the hum softening to a whisper. Elias stood, his body trembling, the book open but silent, its names dim. He touched the cover, and a final vision came. Erinder alone, sealing the book, the library darkening as the kingdom died. The names were his burden, his legacy, and now Ilias's, or perhaps they always had been. He stepped back, the book's clasps snapping shut, the vines retreating, the shelves still. He turned to the stairwell, the path out clear, the moonlight brighter now. The names lingered, not in the book but in him, a weight he couldn't shed. He climbed, the library's silence following, the hum gone, the vines still. The forest waited above, its green embrace softer, its secrets fewer. He emerged, the air clean, the stars visible through the trees. The book was sealed, but its names lived, and as he walked away, the hush of the library followed, and in the hush, your own name tried to write itself. Chapter 5. The Bone Scepter awakens Siliazor Erinder. The name now a pulse he couldn't silence, merged from the library of names no one speaks. The weight of glowing ink and whispered betrayals clinging to him like dust. The forest's edge gave way to a forgotten shrine, its stones cracked, half swallowed by roots, its altar tilted under the weight of time. A hidden stairwell yawned beneath, revealed by a slab that shifted under his touch, leading to a vault carved deep into the earth. The air was cold, sharp with the scent of stone and bone, the forest's hum now a low vibration, like a beast. Stirring in sleep, the vault's name came unbidden, the chamber of the Bone Scepter, a truth etched into the dark. Elias descended, his boots scraping on uneven steps, the knife at his belt a dull comfort, its edge useless against the vaults. Silence. His hands were empty, the satchel lost to the library's vines, his canteen long dry. The stairwell twisted, its walls smooth, etched with faint carving schemes, holding scepters, crowns aglow, kingdoms rising and falling. The hum grew, resonating in his chest, pulling him deeper. The name Erender was no longer a shadow, but a mirror, reflecting a man he both was and wasn't. The vault opened into a circular chamber, its ceiling low, its walls unadorned but for a single pedestal at the center. On it rested the Bone Scepter, ivory-like, its surface smooth yet coiled with spectral symbols that shimmered like moonlight on water. It was no mere relic. It pulsed faintly, alive, its hum syncing with the vault's own rhythm. Elias approached, his breath shallow, the air thick with the weight of ages. The scepter seemed to watch him, its symbols shifting, curling, as if waking at his presence. He reached out, his fingers hovering, and the scepter's hum sharpened, a pulse that echoed in his bones. He touched it, and it flared not with light or heat, but with memory, a flood of lives not his own. Kings who wielded it stood before him in his mind's eye, a warrior king, his hand steady, raising the scepter to unite a fractured land. A queen, her grip tight, wielding it to curse a betrayer. A young ruler, trembling, dropping it as war consumed his throne. Each memory was vivid, their triumphs and failures etched into the scepter's core, their lives bound to its ivory curve. Elias gripped the scepter, its surface warm, almost soft, and the memories surged. He saw Erendor himself holding it in a hall of light, the twin kings at his side, their vows sealed by its power. Then the betrayal, one king turning, the scepter raised not in unity but in wrath, the kingdom splitting like the chasm he'd crossed. The visions came faster, a king, his face his own, using the scepter to heal, then to destroy. A queen, her eyes fierce, wielding it to bind a curse. Another Erender falling, the scepter slipping from his hand as blood pooled. He staggered, the scepter heavy, its symbols glowing brighter, each one a name, a life, a choice. The vault seemed to shrink, the walls closing in, the carvings now alive, showing the scepter's history, coronations, wars, oaths sworn and broken. The hum was a chorus, not the forests or the libraries, but the scepter's, each pulse. A memory of a king who held it, their triumphs fleeting, their failures eternal. Elias spoke, Erender, and the scepter answered, its symbols flaring, the visions sharpening. Erender, crowned, raising the scepter, then casting it down, the kingdom burning in his wake. He tried to release it, but his hand wouldn't open, the scepter's memories holding him. He saw the twin kings, their bond shattered, one wielding the scepter to curse the other, the vault sealing their fate. He saw a queen, her name Lysara, using it to call down vengeance, her life fading as the scepter glowed. Each king, each queen, each ruler left their mark, their memories woven into its core, their deaths a weight Elias now carried. The scepter didn't judge. It remembered, its symbols a ledger of their souls. He fell to his knees, the scepter still in his grasp, the vault trembling. The carvings pulsed, showing more cities built, armies led, kingdoms lost, all tied to the scepter's power. He saw Erender again, or himself, standing in this vault, the scepter raised, choosing to wield it, then to abandon it, the curse born of his choice. The memories were a storm, each one a life, a death, a moment of power or ruin. Ilias's voice broke, "Who am I?" And the scepter hummed softer, showing one last vision, Erinder alone, placing the scepter on the pedestal. The vault darkening as the kingdom died. The scepter's glow dimmed, its symbols still, but the memories lingered. Heavy in his mind, Elias stood, his legs unsteady, and placed the scepter back on the pedestal. The hum softened, the vault silent, the carvings frozen. The air lightened, as if the scepter had exhaled, its burden shared. Elias felt the names Vorin, Threno, Lysara, Erinder not as chains but as echoes, their lives part of him now. The vault was no longer a tomb but a keeper, holding the scepter's memories, guarding them from time. He turned to the stairwell, the path up clear, the moonlight brighter. Through the shrine's cracks, the scepter's hum faded, but its memories stayed, a weight he could carry but not shed. He climbed, the carvings dimming, the vault ceiling behind him. The forest waited above, its green embrace quieter, its secrets fewer. Elias emerged, the air fresh, the stars sharp through the trees. The scepter was at rest, but its memories lived, and as he walked away, the shrine stood silent. It did not burn or shine, it remembered. Chapter 6. The procession of the undiangelized saw Erinder. The name, now a thread woven into his sully, merged from the shrine's shadow. The Bone Scepter's memories, heavy in his mind, their weight a quiet companion. The forest parted, revealing a black river cutting through the earth, its waters silent, swallowing light. Above it stretched a ghostly bridge, its stone arches pale and translucent, as if carved from mist. Lanterns lined its edges, their flames flickering in hues of amber and white, swaying though no wind stirred. The procession of the undying, the name rose unbidden, a truth carried by the river's stillness, as if the water itself remembered. Elias stepped toward the bridge, his boots silent on the mossy bank, the knife at his belt a forgotten weight. The forest's hum was faint now, a whisper beneath the river's quiet, its surface reflecting not the sky but faces kings, queens, warriors, their eyes fleeting, then gone. The name Erinder pulsed in his chest, no longer a burden but a key, unlocking a path he hadn't chosen. The bridge shimmered, its stones almost liquid, inviting him to cross. At the bridge's entrance stood a lantern unlike the others, its flame burning blue, steady, unyielding. It hung from a rusted chain, its glass etched with symbols that matched the scepter's spectral coils. Elias reached for it, his fingers brushing the cold metal, and the flame flared, its light casting shadows that moved like figures. The hum returned, soft but sharp, and the lantern's glow pulsed, as if alive. He lifted it, and the bridge trembled, the other lanterns dimming, their flames bowing to the blue. He stepped onto the bridge, the stone solid beneath him, though it looked ready to dissolve. The river below was a void, its black depths pulling at his gaze, whispering names, Vorin, Lysara, Threnodich, one a memory from the scepter, the book, the helm. The blue flame flickered, and the dead appeared, their forms translucent, gliding across the bridge in a silent procession. Kings with broken crowns, queens with bloodied hands, warriors with empty scabbards, they walked, guided by the lantern's light, their eyes fixed on the far bank, where mist cloaked an unseen shore. Elias held the lantern higher, its blue flame steady, and the procession grew clearer. A king, his face like his own, stepped forward, his crown shattered, his chest pierced. He paused, his eyes meeting and a memory flashed. Erinder, or him, wielding the scepter, swearing an oath by this river, then breaking it, blood on his hands. The king moved on, joining the others, their steps soundless, their faces etched with peace or pain. The lantern's light pulsed, and more. Came a queen, her name Lysera, her lips blue from poison. A warrior, through-node, his throat cut. A child king. Crushed, his crown too heavy. The bridge swayed, its stones shifting, the river's silence heavier. Elias walked, the lantern's blue flame guiding him, the dead at his side. Their memories flooded him, not as visions, but as feelings. Sworn, betrayals endured, kingdoms lost. He saw the twin kings, their bond broken, one crossing this bridge, the other left behind. The scepter's curse binding them to the river. The lantern hummed, its symbols glowing, and Elias felt it. The dead didn't walk to forget, but to be. Remembered, their lives carried by the flame. He spoke, Erinder, and the procession paused, their forms sharper, their eyes turning to him. The lantern flared, and a new figure appeared, Erinder, or himself, holding the scepter, the helm. The crown, standing on this bridge, his vow breaking as the river swallowed his brother's name. The memory was his now, or always had been, the line between Elias and Erinder, dissolving in the blue light. The dead resumed their march, their steps slow, deliberate, as if waiting for him to join them. The bridge seemed endless, its far end. Lost in mist, the river's black depths pulling at his thoughts. The lantern's flame burned brighter, its hum a song, each note a name, a life, a death. Elias saw more, a queen raising the scepter to heal, then falling to betrayal. A king casting the helm aside, his kingdom burning. A warrior writing his name in the book as blood spilled. Each memory was a weight, not heavy but shared, the lantern carrying their light, their pain, their truth. He reached the bridge's center, where the stones were most translucent, the river's faces clear of Orin, Lysara, Althor, Erinder, all watching. The lantern's flame surged, and the dead surrounded him, their forms a circle, their eyes not accusing but expectant. He spoke their names, one by one, and the flame answered, flaring with each. The memories vivid, their oaths, their loves, their betrayals, all tied to the scepter, the helm, the crown, the book. The bridge held them, the lantern guided them, and Elias, or Erinder, was their keeper. He tried to turn back, but the bridge behind him faded, the lanterns dimming, the river's silence absolute. The dead pressed closer, their forms soft but unyielding, their memories a tide that pulled him forward. He raised the lantern, its blue flame steady, and walked on, the procession moving with him. The far bank grew clearer, a land of mist and shadow, but the dead didn't falter, their steps sure. Guided by the light he carried, the memories slowed, each one a moment of choice oaths, kept or broken, kingdoms saved or lost. Elias saw Erinder's final crossing, the scepter in one hand, the helm in the other, the crown abandoned, the river taking his brother's name. He felt the guilt, the grief, the weight of a vow unkept, but also the peace, the release of letting go. The lantern's hum softened, the dead's faces calmer, their eyes no longer fixed on the shore but on him, as if he were their light. Their memory, he reached the far bank, the mist parting, the river silent behind him. The dead stood still, their forms fading, their memories settling like dust. Elias placed the lantern on a stone, its blue flame dimming but not dying, its symbols still. The procession dissolved, the bridge empty, the river reflecting only stars. The hum was gone, the forest quiet, the weight of names lifted, though their echoes remained. Not all who walk here walk alone. some are remembered. Chapter 7. The Forgotten War beneath the Valeliazor, Erinder. The name now a wound, he couldn't close-stepped from the ghostly bridge. The lantern's blue flame, a fading ember in his mind, its memories of the undying heavy but shared. The forest's edge softened, giving way to a descent into the Vale of the Crownless, where the fog parted to reveal a hidden entrance. A jagged crevice in the earth, its mouth lined with moss-lick stone. Catacombs stretched beneath their air. Thick with the scent of iron and decay, the forest's hum now a low clang, like swords striking in the dark. The forgotten war beneath the veil, the name came unbidden, as if the stones had carved it into his thoughts. Ilias descended, his boots scraping on uneven steps, the knife at his belt a cold, useless weight. The catacombs opened into vast tunnels, their walls scarred with claw-like marks, as if the earth had fought itself. Faint echoes, rank lashes of steel, cries of rage, the thud of falling bodies, phantom sounds that faded when he turned to listen. The name Erinder pulsed in his chest, no longer a question, but a call, tying him to a war he hadn't fought, or had he? At the heart of the catacombs stood a shattered altar, and on it a broken war horn, its ivory cracked, its metal bands tarnished, but etched with symbols that matched the scepter's spectral coils. It lay as if dropped mid-blow, its mouthpiece stained dark, its surface humming faintly, echoing a call that never ceased. Elias approached, his breath shallow. The catacombs clanged louder now, syncing with his pulse. The horn seemed to watch him, its symbols shifting, alive, as if it knew him. He touched it, and the hum surged, a blast that shook the walls. The catacombs roared to life, ghostly figures materializing, warriors in tattered armor, kings with broken crowns, queens with bloodied blades. The battle played again, a reenactment of clashing steel and shattering shields. Their forms translucent but vivid, their cries silent yet piercing. Elias saw a king, his face like his own, raising the horn, its call rallying an army, only to fall, a spear through his chest. The vision shifted. A queen, her name Lasara, wielding a blade, her crown lost, her body crumpling as the horn sounded again. Elias gripped the horn, its surface warm, and the battle intensified, the ghosts fighting with relentless fury. He saw Erinder roar himself, leading a charge, the scepter in one hand, the horn in the other, his twin king at his side. Their vow of unity held until betrothal blade in the dark, the horn's call cut short, the army falling as the catacombs burned. The memories weren't visions, but sensations raged grief, the weight of a crown, the sting of a wound. Each ghost carried a piece of the war, their deaths tied to the horn, the scepter, the helm, the book. He spoke, Erinder, and the horn answered, its echo a wail that shook the vault. The ghosts turned, their eyes meeting his, not accusing, but pleading. The battle slowed, showing moments of choice, a king sparing an enemy, only to be struck down. A queen rallying her troops, then falling to poison. A warrior Threnode, blowing the horn as his life bled out. The catacombs were their battlefield, their tomb, the horn, their voice, still calling for a war that never ended. Elias tried to drop the horn, but his hand clung to it, the memories flooding faster. He saw the twin kings, their bond shattered, one blowing the horn to summon aid, the other turning away, the crown's curse born in their rift. The ghosts fought on, their blades passing through each other, their wounds fresh but bloodless. The horn's call echoed, not sound but memory, carrying their oaths, their betrayals, their deaths. Elias felt them, all Voron's defiance, despair, Althor's regret, Indy thread in the war's tapestry, each one his own. The catacombs shook, dust falling, the ghosts' forms flickering. Elias raised the horn, not to blow it, but to hold it, and the battle paused, the figures frozen mid-strat. He saw Erender again, or himself, standing in these catacombs, the horn at his lips. His brother's betrayal, a blade in his back. The memory was his now, the guilt, the rage, the loss. He spoke their names, Vorin, Lasara, Frenadand. The ghosts softened, their eyes calmer, their weapons lowering. The horn's hum faded, the battle fading with it. The catacombs, still but not silent. He placed the horn back on the altar, its symbols dimming, the ghosts dissolving into mist. The memories lingered, not as a storm but as a weight, shared but unyielding. Elias saw the war's end, Erender alone, dropping the horn, the catacombs sealing as the kingdom fell. The altar cracked further, the horn still, its call finally quiet. The catacombs exhaled, the clang gone, the air lighter, as if the war had found its rest. Elias turned, the path back clear, the stairwell bathed in faint moonlight. The ghosts were gone, but their memories stayed, a chain of names and choices he carried. He climbed, the carvings on the wall's battles, oaths, betrayals, dimming as he passed. The forest waited above, its green embrace softer, its hum a whisper of peace. Elias emerged, the air clean, the stars sharp through the trees. The war was over, but its echo lived, and as he walked away, the vale stood silent. Some wars never end, they just wait to be remembered. Chapter 8. The oath carved in saw Erender. The name now a pulse he could no longer deny merged from the catacombs. The war horn's echoes fading, its memories of battle a weight he carried like a second skin. The veil of the released him into the forest's heart, where the trees parted to reveal a hidden chamber. Its entrance a low arch of stone, draped in vines that pulsed faintly, as if alive. The air was thick with the scent of earth and bone. The forest's hum now a deep chant, like voices raised in ritual. The chamber of sacred carvings, the name rose unbidden, as if the vines had whispered it, their roots entwined with the dead's secrets. Elias stepped inside, his boots silent on a floor of polished bone. The knife at his belt, a forgotten relic, dulled by a journey that demanded no blade. The chamber was circular, its walls covered in carving scenes of oaths sworn, crowns forged, kingdoms bound, all etched by hands long gone. The carvings moved under the dim light of glowing moss, their figures shifting, kings kneeling, queens raising scepters, warriors sealing vows with blood. The name Erender burned in his mind, no longer a shadow but a truth, a key to a door he hadn't chosen to open. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal, and on it a bone tablet, its surface ivory smooth, etched with symbols that writhed like living things. A living curse pulsed within it, its hum matching the scepters, the horns, the helms a chorus of relics bound to the same fate. Elias approached, his breath shallow, the air heavy with the weight of ages. The tablets seemed to breathe, its symbols coiling, glowing faintly, as if it knew him, as if it had waited. He touched it, and the hum surged a wave that shook the chamber. The carvings flared, their scenes alive kings swearing oaths, their hands on the tablet, their vows binding them to the land. Then betrayal, crowns shattered, blood pooling, the tablet's curse waking. Elias saw a king, his face like his own, carving his oath into the bone, his hand steady, then faltering as the curse took hold. The vision shifted. A queen, Lysara, etching her vow, her eyes fierce, then dimming as the tablet glowed. Each ruler left their mark, their oaths a chain, their deaths a price. Elias gripped the tablet, its surface warm, and the scepter at his belt still carried from the vault spoke, not in his mind but aloud, its voice a blend of every king who wielded it. "Will you take the final oath, Erender?" it asked, its words sharp, cutting through the hum. The chamber tightened, the carvings pulsing, showing the twin kings, their vows carved in bone, their bond broken by greed. Elias saw himself Erender standing here, the scepter in one hand, the tablet in the other, swearing to unite the land, then failing, the curse born of his choice. He spoke, Erender, and the tablet answered, its symbols flaring, the scepter's voice louder, "Swear and be bound." The visions came faster, Vorin raising the scepter, his oath to protect, undone by betrayal. Thranode carving his vow, his death sealed by the horn's call. Althor, his name glowing in the book, his crown lost to the helm's whisper. Each oath was a promise, each promise a curse, the tablet their keeper, its surface alive with their failures. Elias tried to pull away, but the tablet held him, its symbols coiling around his fingers, the scepter's voice relentless. "Take the oath, Erender, and end it." The carvings showed more kingdoms rising, falling, their rulers bound to the tablet, their oaths a chain that stretched through time. He saw Erender or himself, swearing here, the scepter raised, the tablet glowing, the curse waking as the kingdom burned. The memories weren't his, but they felt his, the guilt, the grief, the weight of a vow unkept. The chamber shook, the moss flaring brighter, the carvings alive with motion battles, coronations, betrayals, all tied to the tablet's curse. Elias saw the twin kings, their hands on the tablet, their oaths pure, then shattered, one king's blood staining the bone. The scepter spoke again, "Swear and be remembered," and Elias felt the pull, not to the tablet, but to the oath itself, a promise to heal, to bind, to end the curse. He saw Lysara, her vow to save her people, her death a price for trying. Thranode, his oath to fight, his body broken by the war beneath the veil. He spoke, "I am Elias," and the tablet pulsed, the scepter's voice softening, "You are Erender, swear." The carvings slowed, showing one last vision, Erender alone, carving his oath, the tablet glowing as the curse took hold, the kingdom falling. Elias felt it, the weight of every oath, every king, every death, all tied to this moment. He could swear, bind himself to the land, end the curse, or walk away, leave the tablet to its silence. The scepter hummed, its symbols matching the tablets, and Elias saw the choice, swear and carry the curse, refuse and let it sleep. He touched the tablet again, and the vision stopped, the carvings still, the chamber quiet. The scepter spoke one last time, "Will you take the final oath?" Elias stood, his hand steady, and placed the scepter on the tablet. The hum faded, the symbols dimming, the curse alive, but still waiting. He saw Erender's final moment refusing the oath, the tablet untouched, the kingdom lost. Elias turned, the path out clear, the carvings dim, the vines retreating. The scepter and tablet remained, their hum a whisper, their memories shared but not his to keep. He climbed from the chamber, the forest above softer, its green embrace calm. The stars pierced the canopy, the air clean, the weight of names Vorin, Lasara, Threnode, Erendelita, now, though never gone. He walked away, the chamber's ceiling behind him, the oath unspoken. Say yes, and be remembered forever.